What's going on, gamers? Had to wake myself up a little bit earlier today. Overslept yesterday. That's why y'all seen videos come late, man. Getting into Squid Game and all that. Hopefully, y'all enjoying that, man. That's insane. And I was hanging out with people and all that. So, Digital Foundry has a very interesting question that we always want to hear different, unique perspectives on. I know I do. You guys know how I don't like to jump the gun. I like to get information too. Well, we have an interesting video here. This is a good one to get into, right? Um. Well, Sony blocked its PC games running on next-gen Xbox consoles and PCs. We always want more answers on this, right? So we can see if Microsoft wants to come in and flex on Sony like this, come in with the guns. Just be like, bro, what are you gonna do about it? You're not blocking anything. I don't know. I at least hope that they cannot. You know what I mean? I just don't trust Sony. That's why I'm the way that I am, because I think what they're doing every day when they wake up, they're just looking at a plan and probably looking at a way to surprise people. By the time things launch, they're going to be a dick and try something. Because I think they'll probably try to like block the hardware ID. They're going to look for some way. But if there's no way they can do it, that's even better, right? Do we want to find out what Alex has to say, what Digital Foundry has to say? Because honestly, I think that they just should just relax because it's not going to hurt them. And since people like to say that nobody buys games on Xbox anyways, and for the most part, they really don't. They do migrate to Game Pass. So if I was Sony, I don't see it being that much of a big deal. But I've always thought that about like easy ports to Xbox too for PlayStation games, but they still don't do that. So that's what makes me just not want to trust them. So are we ready to get into this? All right, let's go.
If the future of all quote-unquote Xbox hardware is Windows devices, including in the living room, do you think it's likely that PlayStation alters its strategy with regards to porting first-party games to PC? And what would this most likely entail? Could they lengthen the gap between releasing on console and PC again, create their own PC storefront/launcher that gives them more control over which devices their games run on, or perhaps withdraw from...
Problem with that is that Sony would be putting everything available like the Xbox on PC. I don't think they want to do that. I think they're kind of a little bit careful with that. I've heard some people ask about the storefronts too and the app so that Sony could just make sure you don't get anything on any aspect. I don't know. I don't see them doing that. I mean, we'll see.
Publishing on PC altogether. Seems hard to imagine Sony being comfortable with other living room consoles having access to their titles when exclusivity has always been a key part of their success. Alex, this is kind of I don't know. I think this kind of thinking is probably reductive because ultimately the reason Sony is putting out those games on PC is because they want to sell more games. So the concept of locking out from an Xbox console possibly makes sense because there aren't that many of them. But when you start introducing limits on what PCs you can play your PC game on, I imagine the backlash from that is going to be extraordinarily large. And I'm not sure the extent to which it could even be enforced if an Xbox PC is an open PC.
Yeah, it's interesting. No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a closed PC system with like a custom Windows aspect. Unless they plan on syncing what they have right here with this when this transforms fully for the Asus ROG Ally. You know what I mean? In PC, and they're like, yeah, this is going to be on the next console. That's what I was hoping for. I personally think Satya doesn't give a damn about consoles. I think he hates them. I think it gets in his way. It messes with his paycheck and his bonuses because he doesn't look like he's dominating the industry, and I don't think he likes him. I think the only reason this even next thing is happening is because of Phil and them. I mean, they're just kind of pushing for that. I feel like Nadella just wants massive third party, massive profit, and royalty bonuses, and he's getting tired of his bonuses getting cut because of the consoles, and he does not agree with it. That's just my take, though. But let's continue.
Yeah, I think they just want money. I don't think they're gonna just like keep slowly expanding whatever their PC initiative is in the direction that they feel comfortable with based upon changing market conditions. And as soon as they start seeing, like you mentioned earlier in this episode, Rich, that the console model is maybe in its waning days in terms of popularity and how much market growth it'll see. Yeah. And as soon as Sony starts seeing that with their internal metrics, they're going to start doing anything they need to do to make sure that they keep the bottom line intact, and whatever that means. And in this case, I don't think Sony would do something like preventing. I don't think they're going to also launch their own store because they've seen such success on Steam, right? They've even recently gotten rid of their policy that prevented people from buying and playing games on Steam from certain regions. They got rid of, for the most part, all the necessary you need to sign into PSN stuff.
Yep.
You know, they tried to edge. They tried to say like, oh, they thought they were more popular than they were, and then the backlash proved that they weren't. And I think that means that the market just on PC views Sony games as just any other publisher, not necessarily something special. And that has a very, like, maybe in the beginning it was novel that those.
That's an interesting perspective by Alex there, because he's basically making it clear. And he's right that when Sony went to PC, you're not going to PC like you're looking at your ponies. Not to say that towards Sony, you know what I mean? And I don't necessarily view everybody on PlayStation as a pony, just like I wouldn't view everybody on Xbox as like some Xbot or whatever they want to call, you know, all these little terms these people come up with, or every Nintendo fan is like some Nintendo or whatever. I just think that those people are just immature, and they always say that rather than realizing that not everybody is like that on console, you know what I mean? These are just people on the internet that are like this, and their little cults and all that. But realistically, most people wake up, they don't even look at stuff the way we look at, like super hardcore like that. Some of these people, they just want to play the game. They don't care. And, you know, I always have a balance of understanding that differences of crowd, you know, do I do my entertainment? But I don't view everyone on PlayStation as a pony. I don't view everyone as Xbox the same way. I don't view everyone as, no. This is just groups of people that you will find in all those labels, you know what I mean? There's different labels, it doesn't matter, because it's just the way that works. But I agree with what he's saying. I don't think Sony is going to invest into a launcher and to put all that vulnerability on PC. I just don't think they would do it. I don't think the Japanese in general like that. You notice that with Sony would tell that they do not want that to happen. That's just how they are. I can't say I blame them though.
Those exclusives were coming, but it's not that thing anymore. And so I think they have to actually have a more generous approach to PC than they possibly would have had 5 or 6 years ago.
Yes.
And I think that's going to just keep going on into the future, for the foreseeable future, because what would be the point of preventing some device arbitrarily from playing your game? They're buying the game anyway, right? Don't you want that? Like,
he's also talking about just the backlash they've already dealt with PSN, region lock, and all that. So if Sony is going to do this, they need to be prepared to deal with that, because the Xbox community is kind of synced with the PC community in a way. Like, there's a lot of them on PC that are still running the same console war, and they want the same thing to happen. So if they see that, there's going to be backlash from them and all the little communities, and the people usually see post videos. Like I could read into this thing, but Sony, I mean, at the end of the day, they don't give a shit. You know what I mean? They're still going to be villains if they want to be. Trust me.
So, and if it's digital, they're not spending money on a disc that they have to recoup then, you know, all the middlemen are gone for the most part at that point. It's just the store fee. And I think that's what Sony doesn't have a problem with at the moment.
Right.
Yes, he's right about that. But even though we all say this, you still can't say, yeah, man, everything they said is fine, man. Yeah, Sony ain't gonna do this, man. Let's go. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that'd be foolish. I'll keep my eyes open. You know what I mean? Like, because it's still too early too. Like, and I think they just don't want to do that yet. They're kind of being patient and timing when they want to try what they want to try. And then Microsoft's probably setting it up. This is why I really believe, y'all, that the next Xbox is not really a console. I just think that's just Microsoft. I think that it is an Xbox PC. Otherwise, how? Like, so.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the point of the PC is it's an open platform, and if Sony decides to limit which devices their games run on, there's these things called mods. They'll just be patched, you know. Unless there's like some massive collaboration with a DRM merchant, I just can't see it happening.
The new version of Denuvo or Starfall. Yeah,
that's kind of how I feel, because I kind of feel like they kind of set themselves up already in that position before Microsoft appeared. Microsoft, like, you know, did that look, was like, hey, I have an idea. You know what I mean? and they need to play all their moves smart, like an anaconda, like they usually do, right? Like a snake or whatever. And they're coming in and being snaky with it, because I mean that's what that is. You know what I mean? Sony does that shit too, though. Both of them do. You know, that's where they're kind of similar in a lot of ways. Microsoft just has more money. I tell people that stuff all the time when it comes to that type of competition, and Sony just outsmarts them. But if Microsoft would made more smarter moves, they wouldn't be in the position that they are. Like, you know, I talk about China, you know what I mean? Sony beat them to China so many years ago. Same thing with the Chinese Hero Project, Genshin Impact, getting into that type of market and getting those deals, and then all the way to Phantom Blade, all the way to back into Black and White. They beat them on stuff like that, and then they get that deal in and they put it down, and it's like, Microsoft, what are you doing? I mean, they're very good at that, and building all those partnerships and collaborations and getting people to want to partner with them, and that's a big thing that they're good at. And I told people, it has nothing to do really with Microsoft, but Sony came in the industry that way. So don't sit here and say that it's because of Microsoft. I'm like, no, dude, they came in that way. They told you they were coming in to take from Nintendo, to take the things they built up. They were watching the whole time. Understand the way Sony operates. Don't make an excuse and say they're doing this because of Microsoft. No. They've been like that. If Microsoft would have not came in the industry, Sony would still be doing the same shit they're doing now. Trust me. I promise you. It's just the way they work. Don't ever get too caught up in another corporation to where you start blaming another corporation. No. Handle them independently. I'm telling you, it's the best way to see them. Otherwise, you're going to use somebody else as an excuse and get blind and not be able to see the full truth. Oh, no. That's not the way I see Sony. I removed them out the way. I said, I'm looking at you independently. All of them. I never look at somebody else and use an excuse. We don't do that over here.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Oliver, what do you think?
I honestly am kind of the mind that Sony will probably think at least a little bit different about their exclusives running on an Xbox now as opposed to just a PC. I can imagine it affecting their timing for PC releases at the very least, because if I was Sony, I would feel pretty reticent to just give my games to a major, what's perceived as a major console competitor a year after launch, 2 years after launch. But I suppose that really depends on a number of factors. I think it would depend on the extent to which people perceive the next Xbox offering as a full-fledged console, right? Also, the extent to which I perceive that console as a threat. Like right now, I think Xbox Series is estimated at like 28 million, 30 million sold units. PS5 at something like 80 million.
Oh my
the next generation Xbox, are you going to presume that it continues that trajectory and the Xbox sells an even lower fraction of PlayStation units? I don't know. It's at some point, you know, to speak frankly, I don't think Sony is viewing that necessarily as a competitor in their console space. I think they just see it as a couple extra units sold, right? So that's a factor as well. But I also tend to think that even though like some of Sony's titles on PC, they don't sell tremendously well. Obviously, the initial round of titles sold a little bit better. God of War 1 sold a little bit better. Or well, God of War 2018 sold a little bit better. Yeah. But I'd also perceive that if you are someone who's really interested in those Sony first-party titles, as so many PlayStation players are, if you thought I could buy this Xbox, get those games a year or two later, still have a console-like experience, would that maybe pull you away from Sony in a way that a PC didn't before? I think that's certainly what Microsoft will be trying to do with their next generation console.
They're trying, but it's not going to work. It doesn't work. Everybody knows that. You're not pulling people from their profiles. That's what I'm trying to tell people about the Switch, about Steam. Dude, once they get attached to those profiles and they invested so much money into it, they don't give a damn. They've been said it. You ain't going to come to me, I'm going to come to you. So no. That's why, look, no matter what Sony does, they can't nuke their console. They have a successful business. No matter what Nintendo does, they're not nuking their console. Microsoft nuked their shit to hell. And people have to admit it because they don't care about it. They're making it clear and they made too many mistakes. Nadalia, I'm telling you, he does not care about the consoles. From his point of view, it doesn't make any sense. He's a business guy. To him, it's about being as rich as possible. And that means all pure profit, and that's just massive third party. And dude, I'd rather you go in the cloud and get on any device and just pay me a subscription fee and service. I'm telling you, just like the same thing with Sony. Guys, they were all pushing it in a different way. You have to admit this. Game Pass failed too, just like Sony's PlayStation Live failed. They're all pushing this live stuff. It's annoying. Like, because what this does is this literally does destroy the physical market. And it's literally about not ever owning anything and just paying it a subscription fee and owning things and not owning things. So I'm trying to do the same thing with the live service. Just give me all those microtransactions, stay on my service, and support all these services. They're doing this service push. This is where you can tell it's the industry. You see? Because they try to do these same type of pushes everywhere. So all of them are trying to do extraction shooters now. There's always like this little like trend and cult push that you notice this industry will try to do. Pay attention to it. Same thing with $80 all the way to $70. They always have these little snaky ways of doing it. And you'll see who they want to highlight to do it. You know what I mean? And in a way, it is going to damage video games. But the greed and the publishing and the suits and ties don't care. That's where that's coming from. It has nothing to do with developers. Even this whole video, what is this about? What will the suits do? You know what I mean? I just don't like that they have the power that they do. They just don't, to me, they don't deserve it. I think developers deserve more power because they're the ones that are making it. They have the creative energy.
So I could see that changing Sony.
It's freaking backwards, man.
Plans, even if I don't think Sony will stop shipping games on PC at all. No. But I could certainly see them saying, Nixies, hold off on Spider-Man 4 or whatever. Let's just Spider-Man 3, whatever, right? Let's just hold off on that for a little bit. I could see that being realistic.
I think the problem with that strategy is that you actually reduce your PC sales more generally by doing that. I don't think it's a good idea strategically.
I agree with him. That's why Sony said they want to strengthen their PlayStation ecosystem. And PC's still going to get what it gets because they're not going to rely on that. That's why they're making it clear. And they're not giving you the answer because they're keeping people in the dark on purpose because they don't want to say anything so when Microsoft can try to counter it. I'm telling you, I think this is how Sony is working. They're just being very quiet. And then when the day Microsoft tries something, they're going to come in and try something. Remember I said this. This is what I think. I am not going to be a fool sitting there and say, nah, Sony's fine, man. You know what I mean? They don't care, dude. They're never going to do anything. No, man, I can't think that about them. I'm sorry. I just can't. I've seen too much to not know. Like, you know what I mean? I would like to say that and say, you know what, Xbox players, y'all are good, man. Y'all about to get those PlayStation 5 games on your next console. Even Microsoft's being discreet and confusing the market and not letting people know, are you getting a damn console or a PC? I don't like those mind games, bro. Me, I'm just going to think it's an Xbox PC. Otherwise, how are you going to do it? I think Sony would just straight up block the console. I don't think it's a console like the Series X. No.
I guess it depends on how many units are you moving on PC, right? Because like some of these games have not sold many units. That's the kind of key issue, right?
Yeah, I think that I understand like both perspectives here because
plus the pirate community. Hey, I'm just saying, like you've seen it with PlayStation games. They're just not interested in pulling up the Xbox app to buy PlayStation games on PC. The only people that be interested in doing that are people that have the Xbox versus PlayStation mentality that have been on Xbox. But the PC gamer who is already doesn't care about that shit, he's on Steam, and he's not getting off of Steam. It's just me understanding the way the gaming industry works, you know what I mean? Because they're not going to care about that crap. That's only for people that are in the Xbox versus PlayStation world. And in the Xbox world, the community is very small, you know what I mean, compared to where else. So there's a very portion of the gaming community that's kind of still hanging around with that. You know what I mean? I do my entertainment with it too. Obviously, I know it's over. Yeah, of course. Sony won, it's over. And then Nintendo won the whole thing. It's over. It's been over. Yeah, and people, I see people post about that. Yeah, we're aware. But over here, we do it and have fun. You know what I mean? We don't get too off track with it. So, yeah, you can still have fun with that. And then there's different wars now. Digital, stream, cloud, all those type of wars.
They would maybe want a little bit of protection if they saw it as a threat. But at the same point, all these like super late releases or those releases that have quality issues, they just tank the sales. Like at some point, no one cares anymore about the game because a lot of the big uptake in big AAA game sales is due to the advertising that comes out alongside them. And if you miss like this huge advertising period because you're 1.5 to 2 years late, you're spending again on advertising maybe to get those sales up again. Yeah, it all seems like a bad thing to do.
Or 5 years late.
In that case, like right.
Last of Us,
Yeah.
When you start posing questions like this, it opens up a lot of other what ifs. I would suggest that if Sony is making a PlayStation handheld, Valve with whatever their next generation handheld is going to be is probably going to be more of a threat. So and thus far, of course, Sony has actually embraced the Steam Deck. So at what point do you actually reclass another device as a competing device. It's a bit of a tricky one, I think. I just think ultimately the way forward for Xbox is being laid out before our eyes, which is to say that it's about taking that existing user base, that, you know, all of those however many monthly active users, and kind of like giving them options as to where they want to go next. Do they want a console? They'll get a console. Do they want a handheld? They'll get a handheld. Do they want to actually just tap into the PC ecosystem and, you know, continually upgrade? So I think, you know, that obviously we're probably looking at the last proper console coming in the 10th generation. And then from there, it's just going to be this massive diversification of devices. And I don't think Sony can really strategize against that. It will effectively just be PC, whether they appear on the X.
That's why they're trying to do that, but they're trying to call it console. That's what I'm trying to tell people. It's just, they know that if they do the PC route, then they're safe. And then that's just pressures Sony a certain way. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's still not going to affect them. You know what I mean? It won't stop their console sales. No, none of that. They're still going to sell. As I told you before, they can have no exclusives next gen, and they'll still smoke Microsoft and hardware sales. That's just the damn truth. They built that brand. And like I said, you know, you see people pushing for live services. The problem with that is that if live service didn't make you so rich, so Microsoft has to put their games everywhere and still, you know, branch out, because that service stuff is just, man, all of them did that. The push is just annoying, and I don't like a service push. It's just what they're trying to do. Like I say, it's the future, but still a bit early. It is. So that's why, like, as much as I love Game Pass, but it's not going to make the industry be incredibly healthy. And it's not going to make developers better either, because they're putting their games on a service. And that does not mean increased sales. That means people are waiting around to be able to just play the game and pay a fee. They're not looking to buy it. So you're not going to have a healthy ecosystem because of that. That means that when people come to your ecosystem, it's not going to be an ecosystem that they're trained to buy the games. That's the danger of the service system in general for everything. If you notice that. And I'm not just talking about Game Pass. No, I mean service as a service. Everything. It's a very, very, very dangerous industry, and you have to be very careful, because you can kill your entire market without even knowing it. Or you could suffer big time, like the route that Sony went. At least Microsoft was able to provide you something. Sony had to cancel so much. But yeah, this service push, man, it's risky business. Sony's business is okay because they're not spending so much, and they have a base that will pay 40% for premium, unfortunately, where it's like Game Pass is way better. And that just gives you the idea of the value that, yeah, it is going to have to go up. So yeah, this is not saying that I think Game Pass is necessarily bad for us as far as getting the deals, but I'm talking about for gaming growth, health, and just being able to have a also healthy ecosystem. That's the danger of that game. You see, just like when Sony tried to push their service, the danger was sacrificing all their first party. But at least they built an ecosystem to where it wouldn't tank because of that. And that's the thing about PlayStation, that I have to tell people that Sony built that strong brand. Same thing with Nintendo. So no matter what they do, you're not moving them because of that carryover. It's hard. It's the same thing with Microsoft with the Windows app. Like, yeah, you're trying that, but did you know that in the past 30, 40 years, these people have built into Steam and into all that other stuff? They're not moving. Tell you guys, man, that carryover, once you get that, you're just going to have to cater to that audience because they're not going anywhere. All right, y'all, let me know what y'all think about this. It's a very long video. I had to like go deep into things and just talk about a lot of stuff. So let me know what y'all think about this. If you want to debate, like I said, always invite me to a StreamYard. We can talk this out. No problem. Later, y'all. Have a great day. This is going to be an important video. Like I said, don't get in your feelings. Listen to what I say so you can understand how business actually works. Not necessarily so much about your personal benefits, but also how's this working for business and for everything else. All right, y'all. Peace out. Have a great day.